Second Language Acquisition by Mayer-Crittenden and Chantal Mayer-Crittenden. This video contains important information about the factors that influence language acquisition, second language acquisition, and strategies to help the child acquire a first or second language. Bilingual children may appear to be slower in the acquisition of language, especially in the early stages, but this is typical. They are learning two languages, so twice the repertoire monolinguals have. There are two types of factors that can explain the differences in children's language acquisition: intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors, meaning the genetic, physiological, and pathological characteristics of an individual, for example, the motivation, personality, mental health and behavioral disorders, cognition, and the role of the language in society, if the child is learning the dominant or minority language. Extrinsic factors, meaning the environmental, cultural, or lifestyle influences, for example, the exposure time, the usual communication at home, the maternal level of education, the level of fluidity, and the socio-economic level. According to Krashen and Terrell's study performed in 1983, there are 5 stages to learning a second language. The first stage is named pre-production. In this stage, the individual learning has minimal comprehension, can nod yes or no, but does not necessarily verbalize yet. The second stage is named early production. In this stage, the individual learning can produce 1 or 2 word responses, uses keywords and familiar phrases, but still has limited comprehension. You can watch the video Communication Intentions for more information about this stage. The third stage is named speech emergence. In this stage, the individual has good comprehension, can produce simple sentences, but still makes pronunciation and grammatical errors. The fourth stage is named intermediate fluency. In this stage, the individual has near perfect comprehension and only makes few grammatical errors. The last stage is named advanced fluency, in which the learner is at near native level of speech. These stages are similar to Tabor's stages in 1997. Resources on these 5 stages can be found under this video. For the parents, stay patient. It can take 2 years or more for a child who is exposed to at least 40% or more of their time to a language to learn that language socially, and more than 8 years to master that higher level language ability or the cognitive academic language proficiency, the CALP, according to Jim Cummins, a professor at the Ontario Institute of Studies in Education at the University of Toronto. Do not be alarmed if they start mixing the 2 languages while talking to another bilingual. They are only mimicking what they hear in their environment. This is often referred to as code switching, which is very typical amongst bilingual and not a sign of incompetency. The cognitive benefits linked to bilingualism when speakers have CALP level proficiency in both languages are numerous. Some research showed delay of about 4 years on the onset of Alzheimer's disease in bilinguals. Another study with 7-month-old babies also demonstrated cognitive advantages within the group of bilingual babies. Some of the cognitive advantages seen are better imagination, better perceptual organization, better working memory, and many more. What are some things that can make language acquisition and fluency more difficult? A low exposure to the new language, a learner who learns the new language later, so older, a lack of motivation, different diagnoses, for example, autism spectrum disorder or developmental language disorders, and others, if the language the child is learning is the minority language in the community, and if the new language is very different from the mother tongue. For example, learning Spanish is a lot easier than Mandarin if your mother tongue is English. You may ask yourself, what can help my child acquire a second language? Regular exposure is important for the child to learn a language. As I mentioned before, the child should be exposed to the language about 40 to 60% of their awakened time. To help, a language plan can be established to ensure the moments are spent interacting with the child in that language every day. For example, doing bath time routine in French only, while dinner time is in English only. With that, it is good to switch up the plan to be able to provide a diverse vocabulary used in different settings in both languages. It is important to note that French educational games and TV programs can be good, but they are mainly a receptive outlet. The child is not necessarily interacting, more so just listening instead of expressing. That being said, if the child is going to do it in English anyways, why not let them do it in French? When both parents only speak one language, it can get a bit tricky to find opportunities for the child to utilize their second language, especially during the summer months. Let's take French as the minority language for an example. Activities like enrolling your child in French summer camps, sports offered in French, French clubs, and immersing your child in French culture like going to Quebec City, or even just to a Francophone festival in the community can be beneficial. And even simple activities like putting movies in French instead of English, listening to French music in the car, and reading or listening to French books. Plenty of resources can be found on theparleypodcast.com. As monolingual parents, there are other activities that can be done to help your child. Learning basic vocabulary in the minority language yourself to teach your child, and enrolling them in French daycare center if you are thinking about enrolling them in French school to give them some exposure beforehand. Showing them that you care is crucial. If the child senses that the school language and culture are important to you, then they are more likely to value that language as well. Make them aware of the languages around them. It is okay to choose to speak their second language with their entourage, even if it's not perfect. Letting them know that switching to the majority language can be easier, but to learn their second language, they have to make a conscious effort to speak it. And finally, make language learning fun. If the child is learning a second language, utilize the language in games, movies, books, and not just school or homework. That's all for this informative video. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to visit www.theparleypodcast.com for more information. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe or follow us on this YouTube channel, The Parley Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher or SoundCloud, and The Parley Podcast on Instagram.